Is 3 o'clock, so let's get started. Welcome everybody who's here. Um, Thanks for joining us. Today we are going to do something a little different to what we usually do. We normally focus on service, but we've got a whole different division within our business, which is training sales. And Pat and Sean run that area. Today we'll go through the commercial sales handbook. Stop quoting and hoping and start running the basics. How the Sales Edge program turns commercial roof bids into bankable revenue. So this is going to cover sales skills, and the reason Pat and Sean are here is because of their skills, particularly in sales and training sales, and relevant to the commercial market. So, Pat, welcome. I'm going to hand it over to you. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a bit of a background on yourself and a bit of an introduction, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And thanks for the crowd for showing up. I actually started, I can't tell you when I started, it'll give away my age, but many years ago in corporate America. And I was the vice president of information systems for a very large health system in New Jersey called Atlantic Care. We had over 4,000 employees spread across 30 different locations. And then I got sick of healthcare bureaucracy, healthcare administration, and really got the entrepreneurial bug, and ended up buying part ownership in a single health and fitness facility in New Jersey, and with the understanding that the owner would go away and collect a check, and I would run the business. And over the course of 12 years, grew that into 7 locations with 400 employees. Um, we were the only company in the world to win Best Health Club in the country on 2 different occasions for 2 different clubs, all hospital affiliated. Really nice outfit. Ended up getting divorced from my business partner and started a management and operations consulting company. And I get certified by the Department of Treasury in the U.S. bankruptcy courts as what they call a turnaround specialist. So when a company got in trouble and filed bankruptcy, they had to look to somebody to figure out, can we save this business, write a turnaround plan, and hopefully return it to profitability. And that enabled me to really understand that business concepts are business concepts. Doesn't really matter what industry, and every industry's got their own nuances, of course. Um, but whether you're in the roofing business or the restaurant business, it's leadership, marketing, sales, administration, management, etc. Same scorecard. Um, and at some point, the commute time became too much, and it was affecting my quality of life. And I decided that the next part of my career, I wanted to be virtual, knowing I would eventually be an empty nester, and I wanted to not have a brick and mortar business or brick and mortar clients that I was anchored to, and really got into the virtual coaching world and have been doing that since. And for most of the past 5 years, I've been focused on the roofing trades, on specializing in sales and sales training. I worked for Sales Transformation Group with Ryan Groth, Contractor Coach Pro with Jimmy Johnson, and top rep with Chuck Toki. I worked for a multinational called SalesStar out of New Zealand, and now for the last over 2.5 years, I guess, with Brian and Ross, Nicole and Sean at Service Advantage. And I guess I was here about a year, and became pretty clear that we were missing a piece of the puzzle. And as great as our Service Edge program was, um, the ability to train actual salespeople to get higher closing rates, shorten the sales cycle, and ultimately produce more revenue on the commercial side of things, was something we could tap into my background with. And we created our Sales Edge program as a sister program to our Service Edge program. Um, and so I've been doing that, taking on the role as a fractional sales manager for a couple of companies over the years as well. And I think I bored everybody enough.
No, that's great, Pat. And as someone who gets to work with you every day, I'm really always impressed with your sales skills and how you follow the techniques that you train. We've also got Sean Murphy with us, who joined the company, I don't know, within the last year, Sean, I think, probably. Sean's got over a decade of sales and coaching experience. We It's awesome to have him with us. He works with Pat, and between the two of them, they're growing the sales coaching business. And then we also got Ross and Nicole here as well. So we look forward to later on, as you guys have questions, just give us a shout. But Pat, why don't you climb into the meat of it and give us some education?
Sure, be happy to. And thank you for your kind words. So one thing that I've learned over the years is commercial roofing sales is hard. But what's even harder is commercial roofing sales without training. And that's really the crux of the why we're here today. You know, what is the problem? And in all likelihood, most of the people on this call have felt some of these pain points, we'll call them, missing out on too many opportunities, you know, unpredictable revenues, sales reps not having any idea how to keep their pipeline full, et cetera. And there's definitely a lack of formal B2B consultative sales training in the contracting trades. And, you know, most often a new rep is told, ride around with Jamie, he's our best salesman, you know, hang out with him for 2 weeks and just do whatever he does, which doesn't always turn out to be the best onboarding or the best training. And our manufacturer reps are super. However, what they're going to do is teach us how all about the features, the functions, the benefits of their product. But that definitely does not help us much in commercial sales. You know, when we're talking about features and functions or TPO versus EPDM, the property manager, the property owner, their head definitely starts swimming. And that's not the way that we want to approach sales. It has to be a much more consultative approach where we're becoming their trusted advisor, almost playing that role of a real professional consultant. All right. See if I can get these slides to go forward. And that's actually exacerbated by a lack of training to our sales pro in the trades. And oftentimes we're asking someone who has spent their entire life in the blue collar trades and then asking them to perform with white collar prospects like property managers or property owners, et cetera. And to make the point crystal clear, we partner with a company called Objective Management Group, or OMG. And the only thing that OMG does is evaluate what they call sales DNA, the 21 core sales competencies that a sales professional needs to really be successful in sales. And they evaluate salespeople and sales leaders and companies as a whole. And a couple of years ago, they broke out the contracting trades and compared it to all of the other trades after evaluating almost 3 million sales professionals. So they compared it against white collar trades, blue collar trades, finance, real estate, you name it. And what was shocking was across the board, in all 21 of the core competencies, we scored in the lower 5% percentile, which means 95% of salespeople that they evaluated were better than those of us in the contracting trades. And it's not because we're dumb. It's just because ongoing and progressive sales training just hasn't been part of the culture of a lot of contracting companies. And so what we want to learn today is how to stop quoting and hoping or spraying and praying and start closing deals. And throughout this presentation, you'll see these QR codes. And if you would like to actually schedule a call with me or with Sean, you can hold your phone up. It's going to bring you to a link. You can actually book a call. We'd be happy to chat with you about your situation or your sales team, any challenges you might be having, get stagnant revenues, bidding too many jobs that you're not getting, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that we want to, consider is whether or not we're truly a professional sales organization, or are we professional bidders or free consultants, or really just that convenient extra bidder. All right. And one of the great things about sales training is that we are always going to get a return on our investment. It's not a one-time ROI. When a salesperson has the skills and the skill sets and learns how to apply them and be effective, that ROI is going to get repaid every single month that they work for us, which is pretty exciting. So when you consider the cost of getting a no, what it's costing you, all right, oftentimes losing one job because we didn't know the right questions to ask can cost more than a brand new truck. All right. And so one of the things that I would challenge you guys is to go back and ask your sales reps to each lay out their own sales process for you and then compare them. And I think that you will be shocked and surprised, all right, at the lack of consistency, or even the strange looks that you get when somebody says, "What are you talking about? That's what do you mean by a sales process?" So that's something that you can certainly do. And our Sales Edge program is powered by the baseline selling methodology, which was created by a gentleman by the name of Dave Curlin, who also started the OMG company. And it uses a baseball analogy that's very simple to understand and, more importantly, easy uh, to apply. All right. And this is a typical representation of it. And baseball is one of the only major sports that requires forward moving progressive next steps in order to score a run or a basket or a goal. All right. And that's one of the reasons it works so well in the contracting trades is it's not overly complex like Sandler training or some of the many other methodologies out there. And I see we've got a poll up there. And oftentimes when we start working with the contractor, they do what I refer to as running from first to third base. And what we mean by that is somebody calls with a problem and we show up, get on the roof, take a look at the problem, email them an estimate, and then wonder why we didn't get the work. All right. When the truly elite sales pros have learned to thrive in this area between first base and second base and second base and third base. And if you think about it, how can a sales professional be truly successful if they need to thrive in an area that they've never heard of, let alone been trained on or had the opportunity to get really, really good at? All right. So
So, Pat,
you can think of, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I- I- I'm looking for a cheat code here. So if I was a sales guy and they said to me, "What's your sales process?" Is this pretty much what I'd be describing here?
Yeah. Yeah. We can think of the baseball diamond and baseline selling as it is the recipe plus the ingredients. All right. Plus the order that, if I can find the right slide, that each of the ingredients go in. And so we start off with what we call an on deck circle and preparing before we even step up to the plate. And then each one of these is a specific training point that we touch on. And ultimately, we get to first base, which is our initial face-to-face appointment with the client. And then we start adding these other ingredients. And we call this the consultative phase. And once we get to second base, we officially went from having a suspect to a prospect. And then between second and third, we call it the qualifying or disqualifying phase. The things that will typically, what I call, get us tagged out at home. We ask for the business and we get some type of pushback or put off or objection. And it's all because we in all likelihood skipped one of these ingredients or shied away from it or didn't go deep enough into it. So each of these ingredients are what we're going to cover today.
Awesome.
But
And
yeah, so you can think of it as the recipe plus the ingredients.
cool. And I'm not going to interrupt you too much, but I do want to mention something. We've got a poll going, and 70% of the people are talking about bids go out, but they don't get signed.
Yeah,
And I've heard you address this before. It's in your earlier parts of the process that you take care of that issue, right? It's not after you've sent the bid out that you start solving that. So
absolutely. We'll
awesome. I'll
cover that
hand it.
today as well.
Perfect.
And that's great feedback for me for that poll. So thank you. I'll make sure we spend a couple extra seconds on that. And so before we even think about getting to starting up, stepping up to the plate, we start with what we call the on deck circle. And this is areas where we have specific goals in a written sales plan. And it's unbelievable how many sales pros I work with. And we get to this very first part, and I ask, what's your sales goal? And they don't know one, or they don't have one. And it makes it almost impossible if you don't have a sales goal to break it into simple math. If I need, if my average job size is $2,500 and I need to sell $10,000 a week, well, then I need 4 sales. And if my closing rate is 50%, well, that means, I need 8 proposals given per week, excuse me. And we can reverse engineer it right down to how many leads that we need. So you can go back and challenge yourself and your salespeople. Do they have specific sales goals? And can you break them into quarterly goals, monthly goals, and oftentimes even weekly goals? And the second part, sales professionals really struggle with. And we can come to work every day with a plan to make money, or we can come to work every day hoping to make money. And that whole concept of having a plan to make money is something that I have found the professionals I've worked with really struggle with. All right. And I'll show you an example here. On the right is my calendar, literally for today. And you can see there's no white spots. All right. I've taken the time before I wrap up my day today. I will make sure, based upon my priorities, um, what those priorities are, and they're reflected on my calendar. And then my calendar drives my behaviors. All right. Because I'm human. And if there's a white spot there, all right, I'm going to fill it with really non-urgent, really low priority activities. I'm going to check my email, take the dog for a walk. Lord forbid you get on social media. I'm going to help somebody out with a problem that's not really my problem. We are very easily distracted as a group. And you can see next to it, this is another sales rep's calendar, and that's his plan for making money for the day. And this is actually a rep that I've been working with, and it's a perfect example of the inability to determine my priorities as a sales professional, all right, and how I'm going to set my day up to make money, all right. So if your calendar looks like this, that means you are letting the world dictate your priorities instead of vice versa. And there's an old saying, if you really want to check a man's priorities, look at how he spent his time yesterday. All right. So we want our sales reps to come to work with a plan for the day, every single day, Monday through Friday. And if you're a sales leader or an owner out there, I would start off by asking them, if you can't see their calendars, tell them, by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., whatever start time is, I want you to take a screenshot and I want you to email me your plan for the day. And you'll be amazed at how much white space is in there, which means, I don't know, I'm going to wing it. All right. So one big takeaway is two big takeaways, making sure that we've got very specific revenue goals for the quarter, for the month, for the week, and then setting our days up filled with revenue producing activities instead of, just winging it and hoping to make money today. First two takeaways. And as we go through these decks, you can absolutely I encourage you take screenshots and, use those screenshots as a litmus test for your own organization. and see how you're chalking up. And in all likelihood, you'll find some of the challenges you might be having are spelled right out in these slides that I'm going to be reviewing with you. So we also want to have prospecting objectives. Like I said, if I have a certain dollar amount and a certain closing rate, well, that will help me understand how many leads I need, how much time I need to be spending on prospecting and what type of prospecting. All right. If doing cold outreach, we need to have what we call a positioning statement built out, which is a really easy way to articulate to a potential client who I am, who I help, and what problems I solve. My name is Pat. I work with Brian's Pretty Good Roofing Company. I help property managers who are frustrated with chronic roof leaks or unprofessional contractors, or you name it, and rolling right into a sales script. And part of our Sales Edge program, we give scripts for everything. And I'm not a huge script fan, but they give us the format to keep us from getting lost until it becomes muscle memory. All right. In addition, as a sales pro, I'll speak for myself. I want to take control of my sales pipeline, and I want to have the skills that allow me to uncover new opportunities. And it's not only critical, but it's also liberating, so that if my pipeline's getting thin, I know exactly what I need to do to get some more opportunities into the pipeline. And then every sales pro should have a list of somewhere between 20 and 40 ideal accounts that you would like to have as clients, and really focus on them for the quarter. And you're competing for their attention and putting all of your prospecting efforts into that list of 20 to 40. And you're also going to call them every time there's a weather event. Hey, this is Pat from ABC Roofing. I know we had a wicked storm last night. Just checking in. Do you need any help? I want to have that go-to list. And I really am competing against my competitors for their attention. All right. And how do we build that list? And there's lots of tools to help us do that. And then, lastly, account development meetings. Normally we get a leak repair job for the sole purpose of getting the client. It's much different than residential. All right. Because that client versus a customer is going to hopefully stay with us for a decade or longer, and is going to pay us to maintain their roofs, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years before their re-roof. If we can get our foot in the door, become their trusted advisor, and have them pay us to maintain their roofs at really high margins, we'll take that all day long. But we have to develop those relationships just like everything else. We've got to fertilize them. We've got to water them. We've got to, weed them and feed them. And we use the term account development meetings, or ADMs. And it's also a great way to find out if you're dealing with a property manager at a certain property, do they also have 10 other buildings under their umbrella of responsibility? Or do they have 3 or 4 other property managers in their company that you could get an introduction to? Or actually getting a referral. And I'll talk about this later on, but the reality is 91% of our clients will happily give us a referral. And in the contracting trades, only 1% of sales pros will bother to ask for one. It's quite a contradictory set of numbers. And I see we got another poll up here. I'm sure somebody will tell me what the results are. So once we graduate from the on-deck circle, then we're ready to step up to home plate. All right. And this is all about getting to first base. And first base is that initial face-to-face appointment with a client. All right. And we have to figure out, who am I going to contact? How am I going to engage with them? How am I going to pre-qualify them? Ultimately, how am I going to get that appointment set? All right. And when we talk about setting up our day with revenue producing activities, that's where we need to, have blocks scheduled on our calendars, specific times, maybe it's every day, maybe it's every other day, for specific prospecting and revenue producing activities. And again, if you look at your sales reps calendars, that probably will be lacking. And it's a really quick, easy fix. It'll be painful, but after a couple of weeks, once they know that you're paying attention to it, or if you're a sales rep listening, learn, God gave us the gift of choice. So we all have different priorities in life, and I get to choose Pat's priorities. I get to put them on my calendar, and hopefully they reflect those priorities. And now I just go from one priority to the next, and I'm going to accomplish everything I possibly can in a day versus winging it, for lack of better terms. One example I'll use is I encourage most commercial reps to spend the first 15 or 20 minutes of their day on LinkedIn, with your morning cup of coffee. And I'm sure you didn't pick up, but when I showed you my calendar, I have 15 minutes a day on my calendar, 5 days a week, to spend on LinkedIn. And then every Monday, I have on my calendar, get 10 new first degree connections. And I just got this report from LinkedIn yesterday. It shows 242 days on LinkedIn. All right. I added 647 new first degree connections, which are the people that ultimately we want as customers, and had over 10,000 impressions. All right. And there's only one reason that you see those type of numbers, and it's because I determined it's a priority, it works for me, and it's on my calendar every day. All right. So ask your sales reps, what type of prospecting are they doing, and where is it showing up on their calendar? And then we also want to compare the following day. If you marked aside certain number of hours for revenue producing activities, how did it work? How many calls did you make? How many appointments did it make? And constantly, be making adjustments.
So Pat, one
So,
of the in this poll we've just got,
uh
a high percentage was just what you're talking about right now, which is finding opportunities and not getting enough permission to inspect roofs.
yeah,
That was a high percentage, and then a even slightly higher percentage than that was not closing after presenting proposal. That's the highest percentage, which ties in exactly to the earlier poll. But I thought I'd mention the fact that
yeah,
what you're talking about right now is also indicated as a big topic.
yes. And that area from first base, once we have the formal appointment, to second base, and second base to third base, is what we call, um, generally speaking, the discovery phase. And that's where deals are won or lost during that discovery phase. All right. And as we go through them, and again, I encourage you to take some screenshots when I get there. Um, you can almost always reverse engineer and very quickly figure out, well, no wonder I never asked when they expect to have this work done, or I never confirmed that I was with a decision maker. So a lot of those things will come out, and I'll touch on those in a second. And what was the last poll, Brian?
Okay, the poll was on pipeline leak, and we had
Okay.
about 30% in finding opportunities, and then
Okay.
43% in the contract execution, which is what we talked about earlier. A fair percentage on presenting the solution as well, but um, yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
consistent response.
Yeah, and if your pipeline is empty, it's probably due to a lack of prospecting activities or revenue producing activities. Understanding where we get leads, and prospecting doesn't necessarily have to be cold calling, although once most people, um, that phone weighs 800 pounds, and it's all fear based. However, once you get the two components necessary to do it right, the message and the delivery, all of a sudden that phone weighs like the amount of a feather. You can pick up the phone and call anybody. And most of the people who have been through the sales edge training, it's been fairly consistent. It takes about 20 minutes. They dial 10 phone numbers. They speak to two human beings, and they get an appointment to get on a roof. So in 20 minutes a day, they're adding 5 appointments or 5 inspections every single week in and week out, by as simple as mastering cold calling, for example.
And
And
Pat,
I've got
uh,
lots of, go ahead.
have things changed in, since COVID, when you call into a company, you're still getting a receptionist to answer the phone, or are you finding it like absolutely essential to have a cell number to be able to reach anybody?
Yes, great question. So if the best way to avoid the gatekeeper is to not call the gatekeeper. All right. So I definitely, you've heard me say a lot. I use some tools like Seamless.ai, and an important part of getting on base is doing the research, researching the account, researching the people. Before I pick up the phone and call somebody, I know who I'm calling. I know what their job title is. Hopefully, I've got their cell phone number. Email doesn't work anymore. Um, I just read a study yesterday, 57% of decision makers actually prefer a telephone call now. It's much more efficient to get to a yes or a no or an appointment than back and forth messages on LinkedIn or, Lord forbid, email or any other method. We just have to get over the fear-based things that are preventing us from picking up the phone. But also joining influential organizations, national organizations with a local chapter, like BOMA or IFMA or your local chamber of commerce, and not just joining, but getting involved and nurturing those relationships, getting on a subcommittee, getting your name well known, um, finding out, you can Google your local association of facility managers, and just getting involved. It's a really, um, really high producing activity that doesn't take a whole lot of time that will get you on a lot of rooftops. All right. But when it comes to prospecting, I mean, you can be prospecting standing in line at Starbucks, right? Introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Pat. I work with property managers who are frustrated about chronic roof related issues. It might be a door opener, right? Oh, I'm not a property manager, but my brother in law is. You need to touch base with them. All right. And we want to view, the truly elite who've always got full pipelines are prospecting constantly. It's not an event. All right. It's an all day, every day kind of thing. And there are so many different ways. It does not have to be picking up the phone. You can do business to business drop ins. To me, I think the phone is the most efficient because it cuts out all of the drive time. But doing that research and understanding who it is you're calling. And, for example, I can't recall the last time where I did the research and picked the phone and got a secretary or a gatekeeper because I know who I'm calling. I know what their title is. Hopefully I've got their cell phone number. If not, I'm going to hunt them down on LinkedIn. All right. And I'm going to find a way to engage the person that I want to speak to. All right. Um, and I do have a small ebook that I'd be happy to share with everybody on how to get by the gatekeeper. But truly, the easiest way is to not call a gatekeeper, and it really comes down to the quality of the lists that you're building. Hopefully, you're not buying. If you're buying lists, oftentimes they're really low quality. You're gonna get a lot of non-decision makers, a lot of gatekeepers with the main number, etc. Let me get back up to speed here. So once we have that face-to-face appointment, now we're going to enter that consultative phase, and it's almost like a therapist. And the real key here is learning to ask great questions. All right. It's not show up and throw up time anymore. All right. The way that we establish ourselves as trusted advisors is knowing the tough questions to ask and understanding the very last thing we want to do is walk in and start talking about TPO or EPDM. All right. And we start that off with setting expectations. All right. We want to set the rules of engagement because the reality is that if we don't have a proven sales process, we have no choice but to default to the prospects process. And asterisk, guess what? That process is not designed for us to win. All right. That process means you look at the problem, you email me a quote, and I'll let you know. All right. And that's the last thing that we want to do. So, And again, each one of these ingredients, we spend time learning, practicing, role playing, and really learning to master it. So setting expectations, how these meetings typically go, and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and determine if we're a good fit. All right. And from there, I'll be able to take a look at your roof and tell you exactly how we might be able to help. And you can make a decision if you'd like to work together or not. Does that sound good? And you're almost always going to say it sounds good. But I'm subconsciously telling them that I have a process that I'm going to follow. All right. We're not going to use the process you're used to. We're going to use my process. All right. And I'm also, the very first conversation, setting up the negotiation, the exchange, that I'm expecting you in return to make decisions. All right. Understanding the need, what the problem is, and not taking superficial answers, but learning to probe and dig and go deeper and push our level, our comfort zone. All right. Pushing the envelope constantly, and not taking superficial answers and moving on, but understanding, how long has this been a problem? What have they done in the past to try and fix it? Hopefully they have. Then you can ask them in their own terms, why do they think it didn't work out? In which case they're going to tell you, exactly why they hated the last contractor, or why it didn't, they took the cheap way out and they learned their lesson, all sorts of great things. And the third step is compelling reasons. If the prospect can't articulate a compelling reason to fix a problem, then they're not going to fix the problem. All right. So we have to help them by asking the right questions, uncover those compelling reasons. And I'll spend a couple more minutes on that because it has to do with the earlier poll about things disappearing. The second part is, people shop with their emotions. Excuse me, they shop with their intellect and they'll buy with their emotions. So I want to ask the right questions to shift them from logical thinking with their intellect, all right, into emotional thinking, which is where they're going to buy from me. So I want to ask the right questions so that I understand what's the impact this problem is having on your business. Number two, what is the impact it's having on you professionally, your job? And number three is, how is this impacting you personally? And when I can get somebody to open up, and again, I'm probing these questions. All right. When you mentioned your rat bastard father a minute ago, tell me a little bit more about that. All right. Why is that? Tell me more. Tell me more. I can't get enough information. All I have to do is say I can help, and you've almost closed a deal right there, because we're no longer talking about a leak. We're talking about fixing their business problem. All right. We're talking about fixing a job related problem, and more importantly, a quality of life issue regarding their stress levels, or hating to pick up the phone during a rainstorm, or dreading to have read emails after a storm. And those are the problems we want to uncover, that we can say we can fix, because every other roofer, all of your competitors are going to say they can fix the leak. Well, I hope so. They're in the roofing business. All right. But we're the only ones who are having this consultative interview, this conversation with them, and taking it deeper. Because when we talk about a leak being a problem, it's not the problem. The water is not the problem. It's the damage that the water is doing that's the real problem. All right. Because if it wasn't causing a problem, well, why fix it? Back to the compelling reasons. So if we can't get them to identify compelling reasons to fix it, all right, that comes back to, why do things go into, the bidding black hole? All right. Why do we give a proposal and then no action takes forward? Well, we didn't get them to articulate in their own words real compelling reasons to take action and have a sense of urgency. And then lastly, we want to do what we call quantify the cost of the problem. Worst case scenario, what's the financial impact? The worst case scenario if we don't address this problem, or if we take the cheap way out again. All right. And, it could be loss of tenant income. It could be shutting down production. And during that discovery phase, if they say, well, it means we have to shut down production, we can ask them, well, tell me more about that. I mean, you shut down production for an entire day or 2 days if it's raining for 2 days, and then keep going. Well, what does that cost you? All right. And the more we probe, knowing I'm going to quantify it, it's very easy to come back and say, Mr. Customer, based upon what you've shared with me, it sounds like a worst case scenario. This could be $250,000 problem if we don't take care of it. Does that sound about right? All right. And because it's them sharing with us their own rough numbers, it's always going to be correct. All right. It's not us telling them, hey, if you don't fix this, you're going to have real trouble. It's asking the right questions to get them to tell us the consequences of not fixing it. And we got a new
So
poll up.
yeah,
Go ahead, Brian.
and yeah, it's just starting. So if you want to put in a vote there, um, but Pat, I think what I understood you just said is that closing problem that most of the people on this call are having is solved here
Yes.
between first and second base, not at the closing table.
Well, correct. It's between first and second and second to third. All right. So what we want to do is to learn, and these five starred areas here become muscle memory. All right. So if we have 7 appointments this week, I really don't have 7 different appointments. I have the same appointment 7 different times because I'm going to be using the exact same framework. All right. The same recipe, the same questions. Yes, the customer's different. Yes, their issue's different. But the questions I'm going to ask, if you put me on a call 30 seconds from now, I can tell you exactly how that call is going to go with great confidence. All right. Because it's just become part of muscle memory. All right. I'm going to set expectations. I'm going to dig into understanding the need, uncovering compelling reasons, how it's affecting their business, their job, them personally, quantifying the problem. And hopefully, if we've done a good enough job there, we really will have differentiated us from our competition who's just looking at the leak and then sending a quote over. All right. And that first to second typically takes around 20 to 25 minutes. All right. The next part, Brian, is once we get to the second phase, now we officially have a prospect. The qualifying phase, it's not so much that we can win deals here, but we can sure lose them. All right. By skipping any one of these. So we want to validate the prospect's commitment to act. Based upon what you've shared with me so far, thank you. It sounds like you're really motivated. Let me ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to taking care of this problem or doing it the right way this time? And if they say, 9 or 10, great, keep moving. If they say 7 or 8, still say great. But let me ask you, what would make it a 10? And they will tell you what's going to keep them from moving on. Agreeing to pay more to work with you or having what I call the budget conversation. It's outside of compelling reasons, the second area that most sales reps struggle with. All right. And the last thing I want to do is to go measure, a 25,000 square foot roof and then work up an estimate, bring back a proposal, and then find out they've got a budget of, $2,000. All right. Every proposal we present has to be two things: needs appropriate, takes care of the problem, and budget appropriate. All right. And if we don't know what their budget is, how can we ever bring back a budget appropriate number? So once you get comfortable, again, through repetition, it gets easier and easier to have these conversations, especially about the money and the budget numbers. We actually have exercises to help people get over that. All right. The next one, if we are not with the decision maker, we have to just figure out how to get the decision maker included in this process. Because if you present a solution to somebody who's not the decision maker, I'm pretty sure everybody on this call can guess what the outcome is going to be, right? There's no chance you're going to get a signature. They're going to tell you, well, I got to go check with the regional, or I got to go check with somebody else. So before I even step foot on that roof, I need to understand, if I can't meet with the decision maker, how can I at least present the decision maker? Because if I can't, all that decision maker is going to see is 3 piles of paper with black ink and 3 numbers and they have nothing else to base their decision on because we've never met. We've never articulated compelling reasons. We've never dug into their problems on the business. All right. They're going to go with the lowest bid. And that's why we want a better process. All right. Understanding a timeline for
But you've
making
got
the decision.
techniques on that, right? You've got some
Absolutely.
techniques on making sure that it's the decision maker. And would you mind just sort of give us one of those to take home with us?
Yeah, sure. So, and and I encourage everybody to have a cheat sheet. Even to this day, I have a cheat sheet when I'm doing a discovery call, because I've learned, just like everybody else, if you skip a step, you're going to get tagged out at home. You're going to try and close the deal and not be able to close it because you forgot one of these steps. But at this decision maker one, I'll simply ask, is there anyone else who cares about this problem? And how do we include them in the process? All right. And then part of the training we're going to talk about shortly, learning how to hit curveballs, is if they say, well, you can't meet with the decision maker. All right. We need to be able to push back on that. All right. And say, well, hey, I understand we're all busy. However, our clients who've gotten the best results have found that getting the three of us, even if it's on a Zoom call, to talk about the problem, to talk about the solution, all right, tends to come up with the best outcomes. And I assume you want the best outcomes as well. And then be quiet. And there's nobody on this planet that can answer, no, I don't want the best outcomes. So they usually will say, yeah, I understand. Great. When's a good time? And even if we can't meet with them in this day and age, especially since you mentioned COVID, there should be no, as we get good on the pushback, there should be no problem at least getting somebody on a Zoom call to walk them through your proposal. If you're emailing your proposal, which is the worst thing in the world, and if you're doing that, stop it today, please. It's the greatest thing that you can do to ensure you don't get the work is to email your estimate over to them. Because if you think about it, how can you even ask for their business? All right. So I want to understand the timeline for the decision. Simple question. All right. And again, we do give scripts for all of this. Um, when would you like this work done? And part two, when would you like to make a decision on which vendor you'd like to move forward with? All right. So I'm pinning them down with a decision-making timeline to avoid that bidding black hole where things just go in our pipeline to wither and die on the vine. All right. It's so easy to come back and say, hey, I want to do my part. When we spoke, you said you want to have a decision made by December 18th. Here we are. All right. Once I've already elicited this information out of it, it's very tough for them to say they'll get back to me. All right. I want to understand the process that the prospect uses for making a decision for a problem like this. And aside from price, I also want to understand what criteria is important to them when they make a decision like this. All right.
Pat, just
And
to help
another
you. Oh, sorry. We got a poll
yeah,
as well.
another takeaway, the three I need to get three bids. Lots of different ways in the training that we cover that. For takeaway for today, I typically would ask, yeah, I get it. Most of my customers want to get three bids, but let me ask you, there's two ways you can handle it. Um, Logically, one's going to come in high, one's going to come in low, and one's going to come in the middle. How are you going to make that decision? And then they're going to tell you what it's going to take to sell to them. All right. Or you can ask them, if all things considered are equal in price, if you have three bids and they're all the exact price, which vendor would you go with? And if you're face to face with them, they're going to say, well, probably you. And then ask them why and let them start selling themselves on the value of doing business with you. All
Quick
right.
poll result for you, Pat.
Sure.
So we asked the question roughly what percentage of submitted re-roof bids do you win? We
Mhm.
had an interesting break even here. Under 20% and between 20 and 35%, the same as not sure. So
Okay.
that's your stat.
Not surprising. Yeah. Um, and again, we talked about having budgets and goals. We have to know our closing rate. All right. Because I need to know how many roofs I need to inspect. So I know how many proposals to get out there. So I know based upon my closing rate, how many jobs I've got to sell to hit my number. But when we're selling commercial service, you should be closing at 65% or higher. And on re-roofs, it drops to, 35. If you're getting 40%, you're doing really well. But on the bigger construction and re-roof jobs, you're looking at a 35% closing rate. All right. And on the service side is 65 to 70% closing rate. And the commercial service stuff is also at 65 to 70% margins. If you don't know the closing rates, we don't know what to fix. All right. One thing that we introduce in the training program is a meeting grader. And we take a look at each one of these steps and figure out how well we did. All right. And then we also give everybody tools for tracking their daily activities so that I know how many opportunities came up this week, how many proposals I delivered, how many of them got sold. All right. I'm working with one company, really stood behind their quote unquote number one guy. And we went through the numbers. His closing rate was 13%. He was getting all the leads. All right. But previous to that, they were not paying attention to closing rates. He was just putting out the most bids. All right. Which is what we're trying to break. We're trying to break that quote and hope strategy. And this is the exact formula for doing that. Anybody on the high end, Brian? Anybody closing above 50%?
So we were on the re-roof. We had a small under 10%, 50 to 65%. So a small percentage of people are too cheap.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And if we're responding to a leak or a known problem, all right, until we've touched second base and third base, I don't even want to get on the roof yet. All right. I'm not sure these people, I need to know that they've got money and they're willing to spend it with me before I start investing 6 to 10 hours doing an inspection, working up an estimate. And I forgot one very important part between second and third. If you have to bring a proposal back, you absolutely have to schedule an appointment before you leave for a date and time to bring your proposal back. All right. Otherwise, you're going to be caught up in what we call the follow-up game, chasing ghosts. All right. You've done all the work, you've got your numbers, and the people, you can't get a hold of them. You can't get a phone call returned or an email responded to. And that's where they're going to start saying, well, just email it to me. All right. So before we leave, we want to set up the appointment to bring the proposal back. All right. And if they won't give you an appointment to bring the proposal back, then you're not getting a proposal. All right. It tells me everything I need to know. But again, we teach how to handle those curveballs, right? Back to our clients to get the best results. I found that carving out as little as 15 minutes to make sure we're looking at apples to apples and solving all the problems really goes a long ways. And I assume you want the best results as well. Yes. Okay, great. When's a good time? So Brian, I see the service bids poll was the last one, a re-roof bids poll.
Yeah, exactly. The first one was a was a
Okay.
re-roof bid poll. The second one, you gave everybody the answer, so I'm interested to see what the poll comes in
Okay.
at.
Gotcha. Okay. So the moving from third to home is where we do the takeoff or do the roof inspection, work up the estimate. All right. And we want to come back and, all right, we want to not deliver our proposal. We want to present it in person. And if we can't do it in person, then Zoom is the only other choice. All right. And we also want to have a formal sales presentation deck, something that talks about my roofing company. This is how we do the business. This is our certifications. This is our quality record. Here's some social proof of companies like yours that we've done business with, some testimonials. Here's why we're the only obvious choice to be your roofing partner. Having that sales presentation deck, the studies have shown, will increase your closing rates by 37% if it's a professional and polished deck. If you don't have one, another great takeaway, get one. All right. We always want to present our company and the value proposition before we present our proposal with the price. All right. And then also what to include in that proposal. And then lastly, it's actually stunning to me how many sales professionals spend all of this time going through the process and totally forget about asking for the business. All right. And we teach something called the inoffensive close. And it's just three simple questions. All right. Um, that, do you think I have a good handle on your situation? Yeah. Do you think this proposal will take care of that problem? Yes. Would you like some help? That's it. That's closing. All right. Closing should not be a separate and distinct event. It should just be a natural progression of a terrific sales call. All right. And some of the best salespeople are not the best closers because they don't need to be, because they're making the sale during the discovery phase, first to second and second to third. And the client's already made up their mind. This is the company I want to do business with. All right. Next slide here. So after we've given our proposal, like I mentioned, especially early on, we want to do a meeting debrief where we are basically scoring ourselves, giving ourselves 3 points, 2 points, or 1 point on every one of these ingredients so that we can understand where to make improvements. All right. Or which areas we're skipping, or which ones I'm scared of talking about. All right. Which ones we need to practice more. All right. Account development meetings I spoke to earlier, developing, we need to be proactive about those. I was working with one client. They have 600 current and past clients. They never once have reached out to one of those clients to try and develop the relationship. We don't want to be that company that the only time we hear from them is when they have a problem. All right. So for every one of those customers, twice a year, we want to be proactive about getting out there and asking them certain questions, building our relationship, finding out if they picked up new new buildings under their umbrella of responsibility, for example, asking for more referrals. Lowest hanging fruit there is that current and past client list. And the vast majority of the people on this call have never proactively reached out to a single one of them. And the only reason we did that work was to get that client, and then we forget about the client. All right. And Brian, I don't remember if you remember when I first started, I said, just give me two things. Give me your current and past client list and I'll run from there. It's that powerful. It's the lowest hanging fruit. It's people we've already done business with. They know who we are. We don't have to sell a new account. We don't have to do nearly as much work by being proactive and feeding those relationships. All right. And learning to get referrals and the outbound calls close at a 2% rate. You got to make 100 calls to get 2 appointments or two deals, excuse me. An inbound inquiry, it's more like a 35 to 40%. A referral is going to close at 75%. If you can get an introduction, which includes just an email introduction, it goes up to like an 82% closing rate. So time is money. Where do I want to be spending my time, with low closing rates or high closing rates? So in addition to the prospecting, developing existing relationships and getting referrals and finding out what other buildings you have that I can deliver a professional roof report are absolutely critical to keeping your pipeline filled. And if you're not being proactive about that, you're missing out on probably half of the opportunities that should be in your pipeline.
But we got another poll back.
Okay.
So this one was on service bids. And again, this is very interesting that 25% of people are not sure what their closing ratio is. So
Yeah.
just covering that is perfect. And then we got a 25%, 65% plus. So that's really good news. That's
Yes.
where we want to be. Um, but the not sure ones are the ones that you're speaking to at the moment on understanding those ratios.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's good to hear people at 65 and above. Um, but the I don't know is absolutely the most common answer I get when I start working with new clients. All right. Um, and another piece of advice is take your CRM and add a stage to your sales process that's labeled no next step defined. And, put the right opportunities in the right columns. All right. And you'll be shocked at how many of the bids and opportunities that you've got dying in your pipeline. It's because there's no defined next step. We talked about setting that meeting before you leave the meeting. It should happen on every interaction. If it's a phone call, don't get off without scheduling the next phone call. All right. If it's a meeting you need, don't leave the meeting till the next one's scheduled. All right. If you did get some kind of pushback when you asked for the business and they couldn't sign it, make sure that you both clearly defined, mutually beneficial next steps and they're on the calendar. Let's get out of that follow-up game. All right. And if you're on this call and you're a sales professional, you know how much time and energy and frustration it is trying to chase people down because you just can't get an answer because you can't get a hold of them. And the quick way to take care of that is to set the meeting up before you leave. All right. So we've covered the recipe and the ingredients. All right. So you know the rules of baseball, but what if you can't hit a curveball? All right. And that's where traditional training falls apart. All right. Knowledge acquired but not applied is a waste of time. All right. And we have to take it from theory to muscle memory. And we have to learn exactly what are those tough questions Pat was mentioning and what order do I ask them? All right. Knowing you should ask about the budgets is easy. Asking about the budgets is difficult. We got to get over that hump. All right. And you should have the confidence to look a CEO or a regional property manager in the eye and ask them, what happens if you don't fix this problem? All right. Um, and, we want to get to that point, like I said, where every meeting is the same. All right. We know the exact framework, we know the recipe, we know the ingredients, and it's now becoming muscle memory. And every time I do it, I'm going to get a little bit better. How do we get better at riding a bike or any sport we've ever played? All right. It's the same way. The first time we ride a bike, all right, we fall down, we get back on the bike, and we get a little bit better. All right. And likewise, imagine if you wanted to play golf, and I said, great, here's a book on how to play golf that's written by Tiger Woods, and said, read the book, and now I want you to go shoot, par at the Masters next spring. It just doesn't happen that way. Or asking you to here read the book on jujitsu, and now I'm going to put you in the UFC octagon against a veteran fighter. All right. It doesn't translate that way. So we have to, how do you learn to hit a curveball? We don't learn to hit a curveball in front of the customer. It's in the batting cage. All right. And next to that batting cage, there's a hitting coach telling you, bend your knees, change your stance, move your grip, hold the bat differently, giving you constant feedback after rep after rep. So another challenge I have for you is when is for your sales rep, when do they have time in the batting cage to practice getting better? And who's the batting coach giving them advice on how to get better? Because without those two things, how are they ever going to get better? All right. And one of the most critical things that we have in our program is a very safe environment. It's a practice and role play call every week where it's, it's okay to screw up. Let's get in there and break some things. I'd rather break it in a safe environment with other people learning these things instead of, jeopardizing a potential great account by learning to hit a curveball or a fastball or a knuckleball during the middle of a game. I want to do that in the batting cage. So I've got to create that environment and that culture where we're having weekly role play sessions and we're reinforcing and also doing debriefs after every meeting. That makes sense. And I'm pushing the time limit here. I guess Q&A, and while we're getting ready for some Q&A, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, or if you'd like to just talk about what's going on at your company, Sean and I are here to help. All right. Um, we can just talk strategies with you. We can diagnose things that need to be fixed. We can tell you more about our training program. You can screenshot this or hold your phone up to one of those QR codes, and it will actually bring us to our calendars where you can book a call. Both of our emails are there. If you want the young guy, the young, good looking guy, go with Sean. If you want the old guy, go with Pat. All right. And if you do have any questions, you can certainly pop them in the Q&A, the chat. See, there's a bunch of Nicholas, are you monitoring the questions box or anybody, Brian?
I've got it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Pat, thanks so much. I
Yeah.
I learn every time I listen to you speak. It's awesome. You had some specific points, on revenue goals or filling your calendar or specific activities. Do you want to just sort of run through a couple of those bullets again, the short list? And I see we do have we had a little picture there about Service Con, which is going to be in March. But um,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
as
Let's get, I'll come back to the Service Con information here in a minute. Let me just get back. So during the on deck circle is where we get those basics out of the way. All right. It's before we ever think about stepping up to the plate using the baseball analogy. All right. And from my experiences over the years, all right, sales reps struggle with this. All right. Goal setting. And that's why we start there. All right. And I've worked with some reps. Sometimes it takes 2 months for a sales leader and or an owner and a sales rep to agree on what is your goal for selling service. All right. We know that for every dollar in service you sell, you're also going to sell $4 to $6 in re-roofs. So let's focus on selling service. Much shorter sales cycle, much easier to get our foot in the door. And if it's going to be a while before we can get the re-roof work, let's have them pay us to maintain it. But I don't know the exact specifics, but my expectation with the new client is they have no idea what their goal is.
yeah,
All right.
and one of the things that re- if you think about a roofing company with a service department, they've got hours they have to fill in order to keep their trucks on the road and not be paying people to not work. So the goal, you know, at least should be coming from the company saying we need X number of dollars that are going to translate to Y number of hours so that our trucks are busy for the next at least 2 weeks ahead of time. And then how does that translate back to the sales guys and divide it up somehow?
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, I want to
So we
mention
def
real quick, we do have a question in there.
Yep. You want to read it, Ross?
Alex, yeah, go ahead. Why is it important to present the quote in person rather than email for property managers? Just wanted to hear that once more. Thanks,
Yeah.
Alex.
So a couple of different things. First of all, when you email the proposal, you have now officially lost control of the sales process, which doesn't sound like a good thing if I'm a sales professional. But what it means is whatever the next step is, and whenever it's going to happen, it's got nothing to do with me. All right. It's 100% up to the prospect if and when it's going to happen. I've lost control of the sales process. All right. I want to know what the next step is and exactly when it's going to happen. So when I email them the estimate, I can't do that. Secondly, I can't ask for the business. Remember, I said I was shocked by how many sales pros don't bother to ask for the business. Well, if you email them a proposal, how do you also ask to move forward and have them sign the agreement. How do you sign an agreement when you just email them a proposal? Now you're playing that chasing ghost game where that proposal is going to sit forever, and you might find out you didn't get the deal because you see a competitor sign on the building down the road. So the fact that you lose control of the sales process is deadly. And early on, one of those polls, post proposal, how many things don't close? That's exactly why. We don't have mutually beneficial, clearly defined next steps on the calendar, on my calendar, on the prospect's calendar, and get out of that chase and follow up game. And secondly, I need to be able to ask for the business, and I can't do that if I email it to them. And then lastly, when it's an email, it's very easy to just disappear. All right. You might need a second bite at the apple. Well, how would you ever get that feedback? All right. How do you know that they're looking at apples to apples if they're comparing you to another quote? All right. The one instance is if you've got a customer that you've been working with for, 2 or 3 years, and they're just going to rubber stamp yes everything you send over, and that's been your standard operating procedure. Sure. Give them what they want, keep them happy. But for the vast majority of the time, just the best thing you can do is stop emailing. Like I said, it's the best thing you can do. You're going to lose control of the sales process. You're not going to be able to ask for the sale, and you're going to spend way too much time trying to chase them down to get an answer. And I know you've done that already. All right. What if the client doesn't want to meet in person? That's what I would, I'll throw it in there as a curveball. All right. Yeah, I get it. We're all busy. However, our clients who've got the best results, ... And I assume you want the best results as well. And then be quiet, make them answer that yes. Great. All right. Or I know we're all busy. We can actually do it in a Zoom. Would a Zoom call work better for you? All right. There's nobody in this world who can't fit a Zoom call in for you to walk them through their proposal. All right. And if all else fails, you can fall back and say, I'm not allowed to. I'd get fired if I did that. But remember where we're winning and losing sales. All right. We want confirmation between second and third, the decision-making process, how that's going to work, when they're going to make a decision, what the criteria is. And before I leave, I want the appointment set to bring the proposal back. I'm doing all of those things before I even think about working up an estimate. All right. And if one of those things I can't get resolved, maybe we're not qualified to do business with each other. Maybe we're not a good fit. All right. If you think about it, if a client wants you to do all that work, but won't give you 15 minutes to present your proposal, is that really the type of relationship that you want? Or do you just want to be a third bidder for the rest of your life? So
you've set the expectation right at the beginning before you do the quote that you're going to be delivering the proposal. Now,
absolutely.
if you don't deliver it, you're the one who's negligent, right?
Yes.
Because you said you would. So that's awesome. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Alex, for those questions. Love it.
Yep. And Jamie added in there, if they ask you to email a proposal, it usually means you haven't built enough trust and done enough through the discovery process, that first to second, third, and that's exactly right. These people should be loving to meet with you. All right. If we do a good enough job between first and second, that's when you have people saying, I don't care what it costs, I'm doing business with you. But we get better at it through repetition and feedback. And it doesn't take forever, but it doesn't happen overnight either, because we're making minor adjustments every time until we're getting, we go from shooting sticking with the baseball analogy, we go from batting 100 to batting 200 to batting 300 to batting 400, and then our confidence really starts kicking up. And when you start getting comfortable and confident and start trusting the process, you have no problem saying we're probably not a good fit. So I can remember, use the example where I couldn't get somebody off the price. We're going with the low bidder. I said, well, we're probably not a good fit, but I appreciate your time and I really want to help you out. They said, okay. I said, all right, do you have a pen and paper? They said, yes. I said, I want you to write this website down. It's www.craigslist.com. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, what's the matter? I said, well, we would never We would never call Craigslist. Well, you said you wanted the cheapest possible price, and that's the cheapest way you're going to get it. It's got to get on Craigslist and find a guy with a truck and a ladder. Is there something I'm missing? Is there something besides price that's important to you? And allows you to open up that whole conversation and get over that hurdle. But that's again why we need the regular time in the batting cage and the role plays and the practice to learn how to handle all these different curveballs and knuckleballs that get thrown at us.
Pat,
But great questions.
what does your cheat sheet look like?
I can give me 1 second here. I'll pull it up. So remember, we have an end-to-end script, but we also have a cheat sheet. Bear with me.
I don't want to see what you ordered for Christmas for me on Amazon, so don't click on that thing.
It was a new vacuum cleaner.
Kind of an old one.
And believe me, you know, in 1 hour, obviously oversimplifying things. But this first part here is one form of a cheat sheet, but we really only care about this discovery phase. That's where we want to get really, really good at. And down below, if I can get this pen to work. All right, that's the cheat sheet. All right, set expectations. And again, we do have these in a full script. All right. Determining the need when we spoke on the phone. You mentioned XYZ, tell me more. All right. It's a good thing for you guys to screenshot if you want. And we want to dig and probe and get as much as we can. And how long has this been an issue? What have you tried in the past? And then a bonus question, you know, why do you think it didn't work out? If they tried something in the past, they're gonna tell you how to sell to them. Compelling reasons. How is this affecting your business? How's it affecting you professionally? How is this affecting you personally? And once they answer that question, all you have to do is say, I can help. And they're going to look at you like, you know, you're manna from heaven. And they're like, you can? Never heard that from a contractor because we're not talking about the leak anymore. All right. And then a bonus question. All right. If it's appropriate, what do you feel the consequences of this not being resolved the right way the first time? We want to learn to ask the right questions so that they are building value for themselves and instead of us telling them the value. And then the second to third cheat sheet, a little down here a little more. All right, validating the commitment. They're willing to pay more or talk about the budgets. All right, who else cares about this problem? How do we include them in the conversation? Timeline for making a decision-making process, decision-making criteria. And then the big bold here, don't do follow-up, set the meeting before you leave this one. And again, the purpose of the checklist is, you know, I'll speak for myself and most of the students that have gone through the program. It's not because we haven't learned the questions and don't know how to respond to them. It's because our memories fail us. And sometimes conversations, you know, get drawn off into right field, but it's just like a pilot's checklist. These are written in blood, meaning if you skip one, all right, you're going to pay a price for it. All right. When you get pushback or put offs, it almost always is because we didn't cover one of these things before we started worrying about working up an estimate. All right. Everything is in the discovery. These two cheat sheets here.
Great, Pat. Thanks. I'm going to give a little update on the chat as well. A couple of questions and comments.
Okay.
Guys, don't forget to book yourself an appointment with Pat or Sean. They are there to advise you. That's exactly what the business they're in. Andy, thanks for your comment here. That's Andy Ford. best place to meet is in their office if you can. You can see photos, things on the wall to make comments about family, sports team logo, the fish on the way. Andy didn't mention the fish, but it builds relationships. So, yeah, another great point about that. And then another question from Alex. Thanks so much, Alex. So, would you look at the property manager as a kind of gatekeeper for having the contract signed? Um, so
So in a perfect world, I want to know who the decision maker is, and that's who I want to run the basis with. And sometimes you get, property managers come in different flavors. Some of them are professionals and they want to deal with professional companies and they're going to play ball with you. Some of them are really insecure and they think it's their job to prevent you from getting to the regional property manager or the decision maker. All right. So we have to learn how to deal with that. We have to get, if I can't meet with the decision maker, I at least have to present to them. Otherwise, I'm going to present to the property manager and she's going to say, well, I got to check with somebody else who you've never met, who's got nothing to make a decision on, and you're not going to get the deal. So if I, again, another disqualifier. So if that's a disqualifier, we need to learn how to deal with it.
cool. And we got a question, a live question. Jamie, you there?
Yeah, I would just say about that question, this is why the discovery is so important because some property managers have authority to hire and sign a contract. Some don't. It's all about what they are enabled to do by the ownership group. So if you haven't done your discovery, if you haven't found that out, then you could be spending all your effort with someone who's just going to say, "Oh, I can't authorize anything." Right? And so this discovery piece is what's so critical, what's so amazing about this process. Because you find all that stuff out before you have committed all your time, if you're doing it correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Brian,
Right,
did
guys.
you want to mention these 3 slides here?
No, just that one is good. We will be at what's the third one? Is there a third one? Okay. Um, we're going to be in Texas in March at ServiceCon. You can um, click on that if you want some more information. But that's only in March. In the meantime, click on the link to meet with Pat and Sean, or if you've got a picture of that QR code. Otherwise, send us an email or a text as a follow-up. If any of you guys need help building your service business, Ross and Nicole and Pat and Sean can help you with that as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Pat. Awesome job. I just love the way
Yeah.
you practice what you preach. I get to see it every day. It's awesome. So I
And
appreciate
I'll
it.
give one final tidbit because the property manager keeps coming up. If you get to that point, you can validate with the property manager to say, it sounds like you really like us and you want to do business with us. Does that sound right? Yes. All right. For every 10 times you bring a project like this to the regional, how many times do they say no? Well, it doesn't really matter what the answer is. Let's say they say 3 times. Then we get to ask, what are you going to do if they say no? All right. Now we're reframing it to them where they want to do work with us. Well, what are we going to do if you get shot down? All right. And then we can have and again, it's all, part of the training. We can have a different conversation about, we don't expect you to be a roofing professional and answer roofing questions. That's what we're here for. And again, falling back on our clients who get the best result have found that blah, blah, blah. And we assume you want the best results. So why don't we just find a time where we can all get together on a Zoom call and have that conversation, and people will usually acquiesce.
Cool. And Sean, uh, give us a couple of words there as we close up.
No, so I was just going back and forth on Alex's last question. I think like any situation where you're dealing with multiple decision makers, in a lot of instances, they don't all have the same level of authority, right? somebody's calling the shots, somebody's influencing their decision, somebody's the gatekeeper to get to them. Especially in commercial sales, the idea of building up champions on your side can only help you, right? And the easiest way to do that is to treat everybody that you interact with along the way as an important part of the process, right? You might find out early on that project manager is not the one cutting checks, right? But they have a lot of knowledge that's going to be valuable for you to have. They're an important part of the process. And if you talk to them like that and you communicate with them very clearly that, hey, we're not like every step of the way we're including you, right? But rather than putting it on your shoulders to play the messenger in this situation, I want to be there to help you communicate things properly, right? I want to be able to lay it out there as clearly as I do with you to them so that they have everything they need to make a great decision. And they're going to look at you as a valuable part of that. It's only me helping you do your job that much better, right? And I think when you do it that way, and you make it clear from the get-go that you're not trying to supersede them, you're just trying to be their partner in this, it makes them very ready to do what it takes to open up those doors for you, right? And like you pointed to, right, a lot of times the board might just defer to what they decide anyways, right? And if you approach the whole conversation that way leading up to it, I think it's pretty obvious who that person's going to recommend that they go with, right? So that's just my 2 cents on that particular question. But like Brian said, whether it's a few questions we didn't have a chance to get to, or if you want to take a deeper dive into stress testing, the processes that you follow now, right? Find some time with Pat and I, right? At the very least, we can provide you some tidbits, some strategies that can plug some gaps that you do have, right? As always, if there's an opportunity for us to help you in a more substantial way, that's what we're here for, right? That's what we're passionate about. So I think, Brian or Pat, you guys are probably going to close it out, but appreciate everybody for taking the time to join us today.
Likewise.
Well said.
Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, thanks, Pat. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Ross and Nicole, thanks also to you and Nick, the brilliant guys from Bamboo. We really appreciate you guys. Javal, MG, thanks so much for your help. And we'll let you guys know when we have our next webinar. We actually have somebody who will answer a lot of these questions. Alex is someone who's a property manager, or was a property manager, now owns their own real estate business. And so we're going to set that up as the next webinar. So stay tuned. We'll let you know when that's on. Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.